this pronoun dynamic. It is a political act, and Americans have got to reject it. It's cynical and it's malicious. What they're doing to us, it's like boiling a frog, and you very slowly turn up the heat. And the frog doesn't know that it's being cooked. And the heat gets turned up more and more and more. And by the time you realize, it's too late. And that's what the left is doing to Western culture. That's what the left is doing to people of faith. It's what the left is doing to American culture. Your values are not political. Your values are about life, are about culture, and that others want to make it political. They want to make Christians political. They want to force you into that box. The fact is, they're the outlier.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. You're watching Better for America, and I'm just honored to have joining me now Tammy Bruce. She is a Fox News television commentator, an author, and a columnist right here at AMAC. Tammy, welcome to Better for America. It's always great to be with you.
Well, it's my honor. You personally are doing a great job. Your team is always doing a great job, and it's my pleasure to be associated with and to work with you.
Oh, thank you for that. Tammy, I want to jump right in and talk a little bit about the culture war. AMAC members really feel what's happening here in America, and the contrast between Kamala Harris and Trump couldn't be more different. These are two entirely different people with two entirely different agendas. Kamala Harris has said over and over again that she doesn't see an issue with using pronouns. Matter of fact, we all have, if we go back, you can search it on YouTube. She introduces herself that way. I'm Kamala Harris. I am a woman. You recently published a great article. In your article, it was entitled Pronouns, Gender, and the Left's Malicious Dissembling of Culture. You mentioned that this culture shift is not just about inclusion. It's being used as a tool for broader ideological goals. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you believe those goals are and how they are influencing really all areas of our society?
Yes, I mean, and it's what the left does. It's very subtle, and it's a step-by-step. They look at the long game, and it's about training us like we're animals to go with what it is they're pushing, because they know they can't persuade us on the intellectual merits or on the details of the issues. Because no living human being wants what the Marxist socialist framework offers. We've seen those because, we've got experience, right? Historically, we've seen it destroys people and it destroys countries. But it couldn't be further from inclusion, this pronoun dynamic. It is a political act. And what it does, it's very interesting, and Americans have got to reject it. It's cynical and it's malicious. Is that I brought it up because I was in a new doctor's office, an allergist's, and I had forms like we all do we have to fill out. And one of the sections was, what are your pronouns? Now, normally I put in your majesty if I'm feeling snarky. But in that instance, I thought, well, look, this is a doctor's office. This person and people are in charge of my health, which is my life. And the interesting thing is, if you fill that in, you are making a political statement. But if you don't, you are making a political statement. And that's the issue. The issue here is forced speech, or you will be punished. This is a way to see who will comply or who will not comply. So if you're putting in she, her, because it's easier and that's what you do, you are complying with something that you don't even relate to. And what you're also doing, and this is the dynamic and the politicization of gender issues. This is an extension of this idea that gender is fluid, that apparently now they don't want us to be looking at science like XX and XY, that it's whatever it is they say it is. And by requiring pronouns is this statement that we just don't know. Right? We don't know what you might be. And this is a doctor's office, right? And we see this throughout the medical system. In my book a bit, I write, which we'll talk about, I guess, a little later, but the medical system and the medical schools indoctrinating students, and we see this, of course, in every field in higher education, but it's also in the professional schools, law schools, business schools, and most importantly, also, well, equally importantly, medical schools. So this request for pronouns and Kamala Harris saying she, her, this is like a political statement in front of a group. And that's why she does it. It is a paying of allegiance, if you will. And I think I talked to the doctor about it. And I said, look, I didn't fill this out. And she said, well, we just want everyone, as you noted, Rebecca, to feel included. And I said, but I don't feel included. So how dare you not include me by forcing me to be silent or to speak? Because either way, I am now engaged in forced speech, which is one thing, to not have free speech. But we recognize as Americans that even not being able to speak, and if you say the wrong thing, you'll be punished. If you don't comply by stating a slogan or raising your arm and saying a certain phrase in the 1930s, if you were in Germany, you stood out. And that's what this is about. It's a dissembling and a training of Americans to accept the absurd.
It is absurd, and they're going after our children. I mean, we see what's happening in schools. They're trying to normalize this idea that gender is fluid and that you can be whatever you want to be. And that definitely flies in the face of science. But they are definitely the left is trying to normalize this, so much so that it does really tear at the fabric of our nation, our values. Here in America, we have a First Amendment right. I am appalled when I look that just across the ocean here, in the UK, folks who speak out are facing prison time. I mean, it's, on their social media account, and it's not a threat. They're just speaking their opinion. If people don't think that that can happen, that can come here to America, then you're disillusioned, because look at how they're just little by little sort of chipping away at the fabric of our nation and making those who have beliefs that are often rooted in religious beliefs. They're really ostracizing all of us from society. What steps can people take to really push back against what you describe as a malicious dissembling of culture?
Right. And what's interesting, it's a good analogy because it's kind of a little frightening, but what they're doing to us, it's like boiling a frog. This is an analogy that people have used, where you can put a frog in a pan of water, and you very slowly turn up the heat. And the frog doesn't know that it's being cooked. And it's because it just happens not quickly. It happens over a long period of time. And the heat gets turned up more and more and more. And by the time you realize, if you're the frog, that it's too late. It's too late. And that's what the left is doing to Western culture. That's what the left is doing to people of faith. It's what the left is doing to American culture. Slowly but surely, slowly turning up the heat. And then we turn around and we see what we've got as an example right now. Children being transitioned to a new gender without parents being told by state agents who are acting as teachers. You're right, in England, as having been on the left, it was always clear that if you wanted to know what the left was doing, is that they used San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, and London as the petri dishes to implement policies. And so just a few days ago, a man was sentenced to 20 months in jail. It's on my X/Twitter feed, because he on Facebook had complained about the illegal immigrants and the immigrant crime that was happening. And he was arrested. And he was put into jail. He was just sentenced to jail for 20 months. If we had a normal administration here, we would be condemning that. Now, they don't have our Constitution, but my goodness, this is a free country, right? England, as the monarchy is symbolic, of course, but it's a parliamentary system that is based on democracy. And people are this is the experiment. They want you to get used to, it's an increasing of the heat, get used to this new step. And so of course, it's already in many ways here. We're hearing from people because of the candidacy of Walz with Harris, who one woman who was put into jail during COVID because she wouldn't shut down her business. Now we're looking back, and many things we're seeing were unconstitutional, but it takes years for us to move through that system.
Right.
And in the meantime, government moves through and does it. For us, I think what we have to do, first of all, is recognize what's happening, is being aware, like this conversation, having the conversation that this is not normal. It is not what the American people want. If it was, Kamala Harris wouldn't be changing all of her positions. If this was so great, why is everyone on the left pretending that they're not who they are? That's your first clue. But I think that what it comes down to also is courage, realizing that the fear that they put us through and the threats of this are meant to have us retreat. But it's about getting to, well, like AMAC members, gathering with people that you can relate to, recognizing whether you're a person of faith or not, or whatever your faith, is that it's anyone who looks to a higher power other than the government. That has always been the threat. That if you're looking to God for guidance, as people of faith understandably do, that's the threat to government control. This is why in the Soviet Union and other, the fascist and communist nations outlawed the church and removed it. It was a matter of making people afraid to not look at certain political leaders as the be all and end all. So it's about trusting you, reacquainting yourself with your values, reminding yourself you are not, and I think it's a pledge, a decision, to not allow strangers to control what you think of yourself, to not believe the lies from the left that your children can't trust you, that they can trust other strangers, that you are a racist or that you are a bigot. None of that is true. And it's a matter of making a decision to not accept it.
Yeah, and you might want to call yourself, oh, I'm a nice person. I don't want to talk politics. Politics has never been my thing. Well, I'm telling you, if we don't speak up and we don't insert our own values in our home, in our inner circle, and we do nothing, we say nothing, someone else will insert theirs in your life. I mean, that's just basic stuff. So you've got to Americans have got to recognize that. Don't let the fear, and I want to talk more about your book because I know it speaks to this very much so, don't let fear keep you quiet, because, that's the only thing that we need to have happen, right? For evil to persist is for good men to do nothing.
Let me argue in that your point about values. For people who don't want to talk about politics is understandable. I mean, we're political people, you and I.
Yeah.
And I don't even know all of your politics. But I would argue that your values are not political. Your values are about life, are about culture, and that others want to make it political. They want to make Christians political. They want to force you into that box. The fact is, they're the outlier. They are people. It's a complete, false structure. So you standing up for representing your values, your faith, being obvious, being confident, is completely personal and based in values, not in politics.
I love that you say that it's a false structure, and that's really good. Thank you for clarifying that, because that's exactly right. Wanting to honor life and see that all people in the womb, if you're 100 years old and you've got a disability, we should honor life, that life is worth living with dignity. That should not be politicized.
Exactly.
And the list goes on and on. But what I find really interesting, I do want to get to your book in a moment, but I want to just mention, you talked about Kamala Harris now, who she did face so much criticism during her tenure as vice president. But now she's leading the Democratic ticket with Tim Walz, right, as her running mate. And she's trying to separate herself, I think, very much so, from the Biden disasters. For example, she wants to deny that she was border czar. The Afghanistan, that terrible pullout where we left all of our weapons and we lost so many brave people that were really there to defend freedom. That she wants to say that never happened on my watch. Do you think that will work? And what do you think are some of her biggest vulnerabilities? The Harris-Walz campaign.
Well, her biggest vulnerability is herself, right? This is a woman who, in their abandonment and rejection of the catastrophes that we are undergoing right now, like the economy, the world's condition right now, and immigration and crime, is that it's an acknowledgement, Rebecca, that they know it's bad and they don't care. That I would have loved to have heard the vice president say in June of 21 that, oh my God, obviously what we've done hasn't worked. This is a disaster. Let's change because America first, because we're here for the American people. But no, they not only didn't rebuke the results like normal people would. If you do something and your house gets set on fire, you'd say, oh my God, that was a mistake. They're looking for more matches. And that's what they've been doing up until a few months ago. Not even a few months ago, 4 weeks ago. So this is, I think, so key. Her attempting to say, oh, I didn't have anything to do with that. I'm your solution to that. That's like the arsonist that did set your house on fire, joining the fire brigade, saying, oh my gosh, let me help. But I see there's a piece over there that isn't burned down yet. And then they go and set that piece on fire and then continue to try to hold the hose to try to put out the fire over the rest of the house, pretending that they had nothing to do with what's going on here. Yeah. So that is for all of the members and the viewers here. That is a confirmation. It's even worse than we imagined, that she knows it's bad. She knows Americans don't want it, but they want to do it anyway. And every lie confirms it.
And people ought to remember, there's a lot she can do right now. She is the vice president. So if she really cared about a lot of the issues that she wants Americans to believe she cares about, where's the action to back that up? And this is why... She
says she'll do it on day one. Like she'll fix the border on day one and the economy on day one. It's how many thousand? I mean, it's been like over, 1,500 days right now?
Yeah. It's hard to imagine that people could support her unless they completely are putting on blinders or hate Donald Trump so much that they would rather cut their nose to spite their face. Because this is bad for America. We've not seen such a time in my lifetime where we have two candidates who couldn't be more opposite. Yes. So getting back to, we were talking about fear a little bit, and your book, just a terrific book, Fear Itself, Exposing the Left's Mind-Killing Agenda, came out a couple of weeks ago. Talk to us about this great book and the message that you're really conveying.
Well, it's pretty much what we've discussed already. It's a book that looks at the political use of fear to control society. Most of us became very clear during COVID. And now as we look back, we see exactly how cynical and awful what we were put through really was, with Fauci just earlier this year admitting that when asked about the stay 6 feet apart rule, he said, oh, I don't know where that just sort of appeared. And we were told it was science. The same with masks, that he admitted that, masks really work on the margins in the population, maybe 10% of the time. So these things that were presented to us as experts and those who knew best were really just kind of made up. But what they did do is that, of course, the isolation rules, that you had to go visit a family member through a window if they were in a hospital, or family members dying alone. You couldn't even bury them. We can't forget the nature of the obscenity of what we were put through. But that's the best example. It's almost as though it was their best chance to really implement the nature of the experiment of seeing how much of society could you control by frightening them to such a degree. Now, it's an ancient tactic. I go into the history of it. thousands of years old. Tyrants have used fear forever to control populations. And it's now, besides the history, it's looking at, yes, how it's been used against us. And because our news goes so quickly and there's so much information all the time, we're like kind of holding on to a roller coaster car and we don't have time to look up. But I go into the issue of global warming, which is another example of a kind of anonymous boogeyman that keeps changing and makes you afraid even to exist. And now our breathing is the problem. And it allows what fear does. And fear per se is a gift. It is supposed to be transitory. It alerts us to a situation where we use our logical mind and our reason to make decisions. What the left does is it makes it chronic. This is about chronic fear, which leads to mass anxiety, which allows government to control us even more because we tend to retreat. We say, oh, well, they know best. I'll let them take care of that. And we suddenly become pliable. And so I go into the psychological effects of chronic fear, the benefits of transitory fear, and what the results are and what we've seen with media, with education, with crime, with global warming. You know, the environment, we all care about and love the environment. That's another living thing that we are the stewards of. But it's been weaponized against us. And then as a result, there's no solutions because the goal is not to solve these problems. The goal is to use them to make us pliable so they can control us. And the left and the system itself is going to double down through the election and even beyond because they saw it work during COVID. And I want my book it's a solution about what we can do to overcome it. And I have advice in the book in that regard because it's really a house of cards and they don't want you to notice. But this book is the beginning of looking up and taking control back of our lives. Exactly right.
And, you know, all of us have faced fear and know what that feels like in some way, shape, or form. And I've always said, you know, when you do have faith in God and you understand that that there's something bigger at play and that, you know, there's good and evil, and I believe the enemy, you know, wants to immobilize us in fear. No wonder why those people who want us to move away from our religious held beliefs that there is a God creator, and that we all have these inalienable rights, the right to life being one of them, and freedom and pursuit of happiness. They want to get rid of that. And when you get rid of that in people's lives, it makes it easier for fear to take over. So,
exactly.
But, you know, part of the system, Tammy, that you're talking about involves mainstream media. And I say mainstream because it's very hard for people to get the truth. You know, there are some really great outlets and programs that are doing that. But when you open up, you know, the New York Times or you know, you're gonna get a different message. And I guess my question is, how do you think that a Trump and Vance ticket can really overcome that kind of bias? Because their message needs to be heard loud and clear by the American people, you know, especially those who are disillusioned with the current administration.
Yeah. And, you know, we're especially seeing it with this miraculous remaking of Kamala Harris. I mean, it's been a big lesson. And we see it in the headlines. We see how they cover her stealing Trump's no tax on tips ideas, though it's her idea. There's a new headline out there just today that Kamala Harris's no tax on tips accepted by majority of Republicans. Well, that's because it's a Trump idea. It's an astounding thing of when it comes to propaganda. But I think what we saw the other night's a very good example of why there's been the effort to control the internet and to censor independent media. And I'll put you into this framework, podcasts like this, which are really nonpartisan, right? This is about values and our lives. But the panic over the Elon Musk, Donald Trump interview and the attempts to even shut it down with this big cyber attack at the beginning tells you that the left knows, like Harris knows, that Americans don't want what they're selling and they can't have an alternative point of view heard. But the good news is, in the 21st century, is that we're not reliant only on the broadcast networks. We're not reliant on journalists, no matter where they are. I think the more information, the better, because you can, if you look at legacy media, you see what the left is doing. but you've got to keep, an independent mind through it. Then, of course, Fox's ratings are sky high because independents and Democrats are watching Fox. They may not agree with some of the things they hear, but they know they're getting a variety of information and clear information. But then, of course, they go to X, that we're looking at material from different podcast sources now, and even Meta tries to control Facebook and Instagram. But the good news is that Elon Musk, and I think when it comes to divine intervention, is that it's amazing how America has had the right people at the right time. That Elon Musk did buy Twitter. He now is allowing a free conversation. Americans can determine the difference. Donald Trump is withstanding everything they've thrown at him. So there's Donald Trump is here at the right time. At one point, the other similar dynamic was when we had Reagan and Thatcher and Pope John Paul II. I mean, that was, a triumvirate that saved Western civilization. And now we are in this technological era. So what I would say is that the ratings still, and even the circulation of legacy media, it continues to collapse. Americans are rejecting it. But those of us who have a different point of view, we need to seek out all these other ways to communicate, like becoming a member of AMAC, watching the podcast, sharing this podcast with their friends and family, putting it up on social media. People would be surprised, especially, I would say, Christians, because Christians are so embattled right now, as are Jews, interestingly enough, is that they're embattled, is that making sure that you don't start, if you start feeling alone, is taking efforts to make sure that you remind yourself you're not, and that you sharing like this podcast or AMAC material, the columns, etc., to someone who you maybe think doesn't know it's around or is getting depressed or feels alone, you'll be surprised with how you're not alone and how many people agree with you. And I think that that's the key to all of this is sharing and getting together. And I know we've got a plan to do that coming up, which I'm very excited about as an organizer. So there's lots of opportunities to get out there and to find the information you need and to share it.
That's right. For everyone listening, check us out on September 14th right here on Long Island. And I'm hoping, Tammy, that we're going to get, I don't see why we can't, I'll make sure it happens, but that people who can attend in person to our Boot Camp for Boomers event, September 14th, Saturday, right here on Long Island. You can get more information at amac.us/bootcamp, amac.us/bootcamp. This will be an in-person event. You'll be there with us, Tammy. We're thrilled. You'll be one of the guest speakers. We've got an incredible panel. We'll be talking about lawfare and what you need to know about protecting yourself. We'll be talking about the wide open border, election integrity, and how you can participate to ensure that our elections are free and fair. So much information, but I will have it live streamed on amac.us. So really thrilled and excited that you'll be one of the speakers.
Well, I'm looking forward to this. This is my first real organizing experience and being with a group for, I think 20 years. So this is the time. And if you can get there, that would be terrific. But of course, with technology, you can also watch it. So that's great news.
That's exactly right. Really great stuff. Well, Tammy Bruce, thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to having you back with me again soon.
All right. Thank you. I'll see you soon.
I'll see you at the boot camp. And to all of you out there listening, thank you so much. Be sure to tell your friends and family all about AMAC. Go ahead and share this video. Leave your comments below. I look forward to being back with you again in just a few days. I'm Rebecca Weber. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.